Hi everyone, good evening. Before we start, I just want to get a thumbs up from you guys in terms of both audio video check. Are you able to hear me? Is it clear? And are you able to see me? Once I get confirmation from you on the chat window, we can get started with today's session. Hi Sharadja, am I audible? Are you able to see me? Hi Ramakrishna, I could see your chat postings. Yeah, super, Sharad. Thank you very much. So on that note, I can get started. I know you guys can hear me and you're able to see me. Today's session is again going to be the usual Q&A session, the monthly one that we run. Just want to, before I start this session, give you something that I had as a discussion with a few students during one of the live online classes. Someone wanted to know what's the right time to write the GMAT. We did a video shorts also, YouTube shorts also about it. I think March is probably a very good time to start your GMAT preparation. This would actually raise you, pace you to be able to catch the earliest round of admission deadlines for most business schools and end up with an admit before the end of the year. What do I mean by that? I'll just give you a timeline in terms of start the GMAT preparation by the first week, second week of March, right? Your GMAT preparation typically spans for about 4 to 5 months. So if you start by first week of March, which is the third month, you'll be able to definitely take the GMAT by the first week of eighth month, which is August first week, or end of July. So it's adequate amount of time to do justice to your GMAT preparation. Why? Any good GMAT preparation would take you about 300 to 350 hours, including the mock examinations that you're going to be taking, right? So if you have roughly about 5 months in hand, we're talking about give or take 150 days, right? So 2 hours on a day, on an average per day, and ramping it up during the weekends or during any other day when it's going to be a slack day for you in terms of how much you can invest, you should be able to easily meet this 350-hour timeline. The 350 hours is not sacrosanct, but 350 hours seems to be the median for most students to get a score which is upward of 700. So start your GMAT preparation in the first week of March, second week of March. Accordingly, you'll be able to take the GMAT by end July to the mid of August. That's the timeline that you should be looking at taking the GMAT, right? End July, write the GMAT. Suppose, should your first GMAT not go the way you want, you still have one more opportunity to take a crack at the GMAT a second time in about 20-25 days. That by end August, you definitely will have a score of your liking. As you're preparing for the second attempt, because you've done most of it, the second attempt is probably going to help you polish certain things, like hone rough edges and know that what you did wrong in the first attempt, you probably did not time your examination very well, or you probably were sitting under the AC without taking a sweater along with you, that you were like shivering and could not do the exam very well. These have all been real reasons why people did not fare well in the GMAT. I'm not cooking up something randomly, right? So these could be reasons why you did not do well in the first attempt. So it could be just an environmental thing that you need to correct. It could be the way you looked at the examination that should need a correction. So all of that can be done in about 20-25 days. You don't need another 4 months of preparation. So as you're going about correcting and fine tuning that, you could simultaneously start working on your application packet, that you'll be able to catch the earliest round of deadlines, which would fall anytime from end of August to the first week of October to the end of September. So complete their early round of applications, apply to at least 5 to 6 schools in this round, and keep another 4 or 5 schools for the second round of admissions. And by December, couple of these schools at least, if you have a good GMAT score and a good application packet, would give you admissions, and sometimes it could also be with some scholarships. So by December, mid-December 20th, before the year ends, you'll know where you stand, and then you can plan things ahead. If you think that you got an admit with a scholarship and you want to shoot for a better school, you can do it in the second round. If you think that what you got is brilliant, you can basically say, hey, I'll work for the next 6 months, earn some money so that I can spend it when I'm studying in the business school. Or you can say, I've worked for 5-6 years, got pocket money available for me, got some scholarship, so I'm going to do things that I wanted to do, and you can quit your job by January end and you can actually go do whatever you want to do. It could be learning French, it could be learning Spanish, it could be picking up skills in like Python, R, and any of those packages. It could be trekking to the Himalayas. You could choose what you want to do if things pan out. So starting your preparation in March is actually a lovely schedule, and this schedule has worked beautifully for many people in the past. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's worked for a lot of people. Can you start the preparation a little later and adhere to this calendar? True, you can start even in April, but when you start in April, it's a little touch and go. You don't have any headroom at all available to you for things going wrong, right? For a week, you're not able to prepare on account of something, either due to business travel or due to some family function or other things. It gets tight at that point in time. April, if you want to take the GMAT by like end of July, you just have to finish the preparation. You need to ensure that you don't skip even a single day, and probably you need to pack 2.5 to 3 hours on an average quite often than 2 hours a day. Finding 2 hours a day is a lot easier than finding 3 hours a day. So this is the right time to start your GMAT preparation. On that note, we'll get started. I have a couple of more announcements to make. One about next month's session, right? We have a guest speaker along with Shweta who will be doing that. I'll inform you by the end of this session. And I have also some information about a workshop, right? So I'll announce all of those things midway through. In the meantime, let's quickly get started with questions. Any questions? I don't seem to be seeing any questions at all. Uh, Guys know things already. Quite interesting. In that case, I can get started with questions that other students have asked me the last month or so. Okay, while we wait for some more questions to flow in, this workshop that I've been talking about, I'll give you an insight into it. Right, one of the things that you also need to do when you prepare for the GMAT, right? GMAT preparation is one important component. It is probably the one thing that you actually have in hand right now, one controllable variable with you. You can't really do much about your past, right? Studied in a particular college, studied a particular program, have some scores. All of that is probably etched in stone. You can't really do much to change that, right? So the only variable that you have is the GMAT score. As you're preparing for the GMAT, it also is equally important that you do not just say, hey, I'm preparing for the GMAT, the way it works during a 12th standard examination or the way we prepared for the JEE examination. You also need to get started by kind of getting in touch with schools, kind of getting an idea about what schools you want to apply and other things. When you do that, you need to have a resume in place. So this workshop that I was talking about, which I'll talk about a little later, seen a couple of questions coming in. Those are to help you get started with your resume process. We'll go into that in a while. Let me take these questions, start answering the questions, and then end you with the workshop information so it's fresh in your mind as we end this session. Right. Sharat's question, I'm having 3 years of work ex in IT field. I'm confused about MA and MSc because see the average age is more than 28 in UK colleges for MBA. How important is age a factor? 3+ years of experience you already have. It's a good time to apply for an MBA program, right? See what you're talking about. Typically, I see 28 as the age for UK colleges. Yes, no doubting at all. Anyone with 1 or 2 years of experience is too young to start an MBA program. And the schools themselves will suggest that you take up an MSc program or an equivalent, which is the MIM program, to go ahead with it because you don't have adequate amount of experience. 36+ months, you're right now preparing for your GMAT. You probably will go and take your examination as we talked about sometime in July, August. You're going to be applying for next intake. By the time you'll have 4.5 years of experience. So that's going to put you in the 25 to 26 age bracket. 28 could be the median, 28 could be the average, but 26 with 4.5 4 years of experience is definitely on. So you should look at an MBA program. The rationale is, at the end of the day, if you have lesser experience, an MSc program makes a lot of sense. You don't have to wait, you can get on board. You might get an entry-level job in the management category if you do an MSc program in management or an MIM. If you have 4+ years of experience, go ahead and do an MBA program. The advantage of doing an MBA program versus an MSc program, at times people find that the MSc program is good. It got them a kind of a leg up in terms of getting into the corporate world, into the management category. But 5 years, 10 years, 12 years down the line, some of them go ahead and do a second MBA to give them a second boost in career. If you do an MBA to start with 4.5 years of experience, the necessity to do a second MBA or a second master's program in management in the form of an MBA is kind of obviated. You have 3 years of experience, the sweet spot to start preparing for the GMAT. I would definitely recommend that you look at an MBA rather than look at an MSc. 4 years of experience by the time you start your MBA program is adequate. You don't need to be 28 to get in there. Right. Mukund, I'll take your question. So can you please suggest a quant preparation strategy? Mukund, can you quickly say what is your background in the chat window, so it like be able to give you something which is not a very generic answer and something that is going to be very tailored to what your background is? Are you an engineer or you're a person who has done math? Are you comfortable with math? Any of these things, if you can give me some idea about where you stand, I'll be able to do that. Probably take your question after you've keyed that in. I'll in the meantime take Satvik's question. Satvik says, third year engineering student, when should I start? third year engineering student, you are in your sixth semester right now, even semester, this is the ideal time to get started with your GMAT preparation. I'll explain why this is. Your GMAT preparation, as we talked about, is going to be for about 4 months. So by August, which is when you're entering your seventh semester, you will have your GMAT score in hand. You'll not be able to apply to the MBA programs outside India, because the MBA programs outside India will require you to have at least 3 years of experience. So if you're keen and you say that, hey, I actually want to do an MBA program, taking the GMAT by the end of the third year and waiting it out another 1 year to finish the college and 3 years of experience will still have your GMAT score intact and valid. GMAT scores are typically valid for 5 years. The advantage of doing right now is that you're in college. While you're in college, for all the things that many of us said when we were in college, saying that college life is busy, I have to do projects, I'll have to do this, I'll have to do that. It's actually a holiday compared to how your life is going to be once you start working. Many times when you work, most places in India, you travel for at least 2 hours to and fro. Sometimes for one-way journey, it's a 2-hour journey, right? So that's a lot of travel. There's a lot of commitment at work. You do late nights. You can't tell your boss you're preparing for the GMAT. You have to manage GMAT preparation while you're working, and that is a lot more difficult than managing GMAT preparation as a student. During your unit tests, during your internal examinations, during your final semester examinations, those are the times you need to take break from your GMAT preparation. Otherwise, focus on your GMAT, get the GMAT score. If you can bank a 750 GMAT, the score is valid for 5 years. If you choose to do an MBA, I'm using that word, you still will have the GMAT score valid when you have gained 3+ years of experience. On the contrary, there are a couple of other alternatives for any fresher who is taking the GMAT. One, you can apply to schools such as the ISB, Harvard. A lot of schools have what is called as a 2+2 or the early entry program or young leader program. They have it by different names. Essentially, what they do is they would give you an admit for a program starting 2 years from the time you graduate. You're in your third year right now. So 2023 April is when you will be graduating. 2025 admission, they will provide it to you in 2023. It's like advanced seat reservation for a 2025 MBA program. Have a good GMAT score, apply to this 2+2 or early admission program or young leaders program, depending upon what the school calls it. You have reserved an MBA seat. All that you need to do is gain 2 years of experience after your college. The third option, which is available to anyone who takes a GMAT by the 6th semester end or early 7th semester, is that you could choose to do programs which are master's programs in management, which is not an MBA, right? What are called the MIM programs, Masters in Management program, MSc in International Management program. All of these are available a lot in the Europe and also in the US. These programs do not require any amount of experience. They take freshers. And if you have a good GMAT score, you could land up with good amount of scholarships along with this program. So that's the third option. And lastly, there's one more thing. Quite a lot of Indian business schools, not the IIMs, not the XLRI, but there are a lot of good business schools in India which accept the GMAT score as one of the entrance test scores for you to apply to their 2-year flagship programs. Like schools like Great Lakes Institute of Management accepts it, SPJN accepts it, XIM Bhubaneswar accepts it. A lot of these schools, they say, hey, write the GMAT, write the CAT, write the XAT, any one of these scores, whichever score you think is a good score from you, please go ahead and apply with that score. So having the GMAT score done and dusted by the time you enter the final year is a brilliant option to have. You can play things as they pan out. You can write the CAT when you're in your 7th semester. If CAT gives you a good admit, go ahead with CAT. If CAT does not give you the admit that you're looking for, and you can use your GMAT score to get that admit in the same school, I think you should take it up. So final year, when you enter, write the GMAT, start your GMAT preparation right now. Take this question from Neeraj Pawar. Thanks, Neeraj. Please tell if 3 months are enough for prep from now. 3 months is good enough if you can invest probably about 3.5 hours on an average a day. My suggestion is pack it fully. Don't take any break at all. You cannot have any leeway if you're trying to do it in 3 months. Usually it takes about 2 months to get the basics in place itself, right? As in, like, you'll be doing quant and verbal in sync. It's not going to be 1 hour of quant, 1 hour of verbal. You might probably say, these 3 days, let me finish 2 topics in quant. And then you'll say, let me give the next week for sentence correction. And then you'll come back to 3 more topics in quant. So mix and match these two and do it to do justice to it, to get adequate amount of practice. When I say adequate amount of practice, let's give some ballpark number. About 1500 plus quant questions is what I would call as the tipping point at which you get comfortable with the fact that you can solve questions. This should span across multiple topics. And give or take about 1200 questions in verbal is the point in time when you will feel confident to say that, hey, I know how this works, right? I've seen this. I can do a vertical scan of the 5 answer options and I can say that these 3 will not work in these 2. Now in this 2, this is likely to be a trap that they'll sit in this. I have to watch out for this and then get to the answer. Those kinds of narratives happen only when you have 1200 plus questions in your bag. So to do this justice to 2700 questions after gaining the concepts in place would take you at least 2 months. If I'm conservative, I would say that would take you about 2.5 months. You would need another month from that point in time to take practice tests, analyze the practice tests, understand what you need to do to improve things there, and then use every mock test that you take as a feedback loop to improve upon your score. 3.5, I'll be more comfortable. 3 is doable. If you want to do it in 3, my suggestion is the last 15 days, just take a break from whatever you're doing. If you're working, take a break. See if you can get 15 days off from work. If you're in college, pick those last 15 days to be the time when you know that you're relatively free. You've submitted your assignments, you've done your internals, you've done everything. All that you're doing is you're probably in your early stage of your study holidays, if one such exists this year, for your examinations. So it is possible to do. 3.5 would be more comfortable. Another 15 days gives you that much more room, and you need to pack in 3.5 hours a day. It cannot be anything lesser than that. And my only thing, guys, I keep coming back to it. The higher the GMAT score you can pack, if you can do extra some 2 more things that it can take you from a 720 to 730, do it. It's worth it, right? If it takes another 15 more days, it's absolutely fine. A higher GMAT score is a place where you kind of you're batting from a comfort zone, right? You come into the way Dhoni starts batting for CSK in the 16th over, and then like he's in a flourish, the old Dhoni, and he has 4 overs and he can do wonders. He can take your score from 150 to 230 in a T20, right? That's the kind of number that 740, 750 in the GMAT is. So the more you can pack your GMAT score, the better off you are, right? I'll go back to that question with Mukund had, right? Mukund, I'll take your question. I'm a chartered accountant, had done maths last during my BCom, hence lack confidence in quant. What would be a good strategy to approach quant? See, my suggestion is give yourself 2 months for quant. The first 1 month, I would suggest just learn every topic, right? When I say learn every topic, don't worry about how long it takes, right? If, for example, there are topics which you can really coast through in no time at all, something like percentages, profit loss, being a commerce graduate, being a chartered accountant, these are things that you willy-nilly will do in your day-to-day work, right? Percentages calculation is going to be default, right? Every ratio that you compute, every profitability margin that you compute is basically this. Profit loss is something that you compute anyway when you draw your balance sheets and like financial statements. So these are things which are very much up your street. So my thing is basically pick topics like that, run through them quickly, get them done, right? Ratios, proportions, percentages, profits, these kinds of topics. When you step into, so this gives you momentum. If you've done about 400 questions in these 4 topics taken together, and you've got most of them right, and it also feels like this is exactly how my CA examinations, the entrance examinations, if you chose that route to get into the CA, worked, your confidence kind of gets built saying, hey, no, I think I can handle it. Then step into the little more serious mathy quanti topics, right? These are quant topics. Number systems, number properties has got more math, more concepts to it. Pick those topics and give yourself saying, hey, I'll take 5 to 7 days. If it takes 5 days, it takes 5 days. If it takes 7 days, it takes 7 days. I'm not going to rush into it, but I'm going to look at all of these questions, right? I'll first learn the how, right? How to find the LCM, you need to know. Then I'll invest time on what is this LCM all about. Then I'll also equally invest time on when should I do the LCM, when should I do the HCF, right? So it's a how, what, when. These, if you can get clarity and then look at, is there any other way to look at it? Is there a different angle to it? Okay, hey, they're talking about this quadratic equations. We've all done quadratic equations in class 10. What does it mean when it is plotted on XY plane? So ask these questions and get clarity on it. Get your fundamentals addressed. Once you've done that, do about 100 questions in it to consolidate it. So every time you do a question, see if you can kind of get back to how this was tested as a the core idea that you had, how is it getting translated into a question for a GMAT purpose. Do that. The important topics, invest time. Don't worry about how long it takes, right? If you take the GMAT by August, wonderful. If you take the GMAT by October, it's still not bad. It takes you additional 2 more months to get to that Q50 in quant. Q50 in quant is one awesome number to have. That puts you in the category of people who are really good in math, and that gives you confidence that you can handle any rigor that is going to be quant intensive in a business school. And it also tells a business school admissions team that you're phenomenally good in terms of handling what it takes to get into that program and do justice to the program. So my thing is, will you be able to take the GMAT in August if you give this 2 months to quant? Certainly will be. But August is a number that as a date that I've given. If it takes you October to get there, and in the process you know that you're going to fix this idea about, hey, I've lost touch with math, I'm probably shaky in it, I'm not confident about it. We can gain back that confidence. That extra 2 months is worth every second that you invested, right? That confidence is something which is not going to last only up till your GMAT examination. That confidence is something you're going to carry for a long, long time to go. For something that's that long an investment that you're going to make, 2 months is no time at all. It's too short a window to even think about. I mean, taking 2 more months. I think you should go ahead and do it, whatever it takes. Right. We look at next question. I think I've answered your question, Mukund. Uh, look at just a minute, guys. I have to just see how this it scrolls up quite fast. So what is the admission time for IIM, ABC, Executive MBA? These schools have different deadlines. They have round 1, round 2, and sometimes even round 3. The earliest round deadlines should be by July of this year. I don't remember the date exactly. One of my colleagues will check the dates and like post it in the chat window for you. They'll have a second round of deadline, which is typically going to be around November if they have a second round and only 2 rounds. If they have a third round, the third round could go up until January of next year. So these are the application deadlines for it. Programs start in the month of April. So all of these things are brilliant programs, very competitive programs, and the cohort is good. People with whom you'll be learning, people who teach for you are all phenomenal, right? So the earliest round of deadline you should plan by about July and August. So if you have your GMAT score by mid-July, you should be good to catch the earliest deadline, right? If one of the team members of Wizako, if you can find the deadlines and post it, it's going to be useful for everyone, right? Pratap's question, I'll take it. Uh, Looking forward to getting some valuable GMAT strategy tips. Yeah, as we go ahead, I'll do it. Thanks, Pratap. Kishore, I scored a 440 on my GMAT mark now. How to improve till end of March? I'm diligent with my preparation. I'm struggling in quants. Okay, 450 is a score. It's not just in quants that you would have had an issue. Even your verbal score would have been not up to the mark. Otherwise, like it would have been a slightly higher score in that sense. Right? Let's address quant because that's what you want to address. My suggestion is give it a little more time. March end is too short a time to ramp up your score from 450 to something which is like a lot higher, right? This mock score that you take, there are a couple of things I want to keep address before we go about it. If this mock was taken from an available mock on MBA.com, this score is a lot more trustworthy score. It's not that the other test preparation companies design their test to be not trustworthy, but the point to keep in mind is they re-engineer or they reverse engineer in their mind what the engine that GMAT is using. So if you've taken one of those tests, some of those tests tend to be difficult, some of those tests tend to test questions which are probably not necessarily GMAT-ish. So your 450 that you got and the quant that you got there might probably be even a 540 or a 520. In any case, it's not a number that you should bat for. You should bat for a much higher number from that point forward, right? If you're at a 525, 450 is not going to be 700 in any test, right? So 450 might be a 520 if it had been MBA.com, or a 450 might have been a 450 itself, right? Now, having said that, to increase from a 450 or a 500 to a 700 level requires a minimum of at least 120 hours of investment when it comes to the quant component alone. You would require another 100 plus hours of investment when it comes to the verbal component alone. So do not plan to do anything by the end of March. That's my serious advice to you. Give yourself time at least till the first week of May to take the test. That would give you adequate time. Many times when you are here, you'll think that, hey, my leave gets over right now. I want to do this before someone's wedding. I want to do this before I start my travel plans. I want to do this before this. I want to finish it in this financial year. We set artificial timelines. Those are important, but it should be realistic timelines. If they're unrealistic timelines, 450 to 700 in probably 25 days would be something that I would not bat for. I would want you to take a little more time before you can go for it. Someone wants to appear in April last, what should be the strategy? Tell me if you want to take the GMAT in April. I'm assuming that you've started a GMAT preparation at least a month back, right? You, as I mentioned, 3 months preparation is the timeline that most people will look at. Unless you're giving full time to the GMAT, if you can invest about 8 hours for the GMAT, then probably you can compress it to 2 months. Set tight timelines, right? Say that like I'm going to take the next 10 days to complete the entire 20 topics that are typically tested in the GMAT, right? You should do the first round of connection and complete it by that point in time. Next 10 days, you'll say that like I'm going to finish sentence correction and simultaneously work on my reading comprehension. Give another 10 days and say that I'll ramp up my RC as I'm working with CR. So 30 days, you're done one round of basic concept orientation when it comes to the quant, and would have probably in the process solved close to about 300 or 400 quant questions. And you would have done justice to your theory component of both CR and AC and solved about 200 questions each. And then you would have done 25 to 30 RC passages. That's what you should be looking at in a month's time. So by April first week, you should be there. Subsequently, next 10-15 days, ramp up your entire practice. Should do in 15 days close to about 1800 to 2000 questions between quant and verbal. That's of the order of magnitude of about 120, 130 questions is what we are looking at. Then take your mocks. You should be able to take the GMAT by the end of April, right? So you need to have a tight timeline. You need to invest. Let's say you would spend physically about 8 to 10 hours. You would get value for about 4 to 5 hours, because if you spend 10 hours in front of when you study, what you'd actually be doing justice is probably for 60% of that, like 5 to 6 hours is what you're likely to gain out of it. That's enough. 2 months and 6 hours of focus time stretched over a 10-hour period. You can do the GMAT. You can take the GMAT by end April and get a score. All of what I talk are for scores upward of 700. But set time tight timelines. Sorry guys, excuse me. If you realize at some point you need another 10 days. Don't be so critical about, hey, I've said it is April end and I need to stick to it. Stretch it to a May 10th. Don't stretch it to May end. Right? Another 10 days this way, that way is absolutely fine. Don't worry about booking slots for the GMAT. You will get slots. As someone asked a little while ago, will I get a slot if I want on a particular date? On a particular date, it may not be possible, but in a particular week, you might be able to. To give an example, I reside in Chennai. If there are 2 centers in Chennai, if you don't get a slot in Chennai, in 3 to 8 hours traveling distance, you have adequate centers. Bangalore has got 2 centers, Vellore has got a center, Coimbatore has got a center, Trichy has got a center. So I can travel to one of these places if I want to take the GMAT in this week, right? I'll be able to find a slot and I'll be able to take the GMAT. So don't worry about blocking a slot and like then sticking to it. Once your GMAT, mock GMAT scores taken from MBA.com are in the 10 points plus or minus what your desired score is, that's the time to actually book your GMAT examination. So I have 71, 73, 61 scores across 10th, 12th UG. Will I still get a tuition waiver in colleges abroad? How much should I score in the GMAT if I need a tuition fee waiver? Right, see, tuition fee waiver, your undergraduate score is a little low, but you can compensate for it by saying that that is not reflective of your academic competence. The GMAT score is probably what is reflective of it. If you have a 720 plus GMAT score, there are schools which will start offering tuition fee waivers. If you have a 740 plus score, then quite a lot of schools will get you. I mean, suddenly the basket expands significantly from 720 to 740. 740 plus, your chance of getting a scholarship is that much higher. You'd get some form of tuition favor. It need not be 100%. But if you are not very picky about the rank of the school, you would get good schools. I'm not saying you're going to look at schools, your 200th rank school. I'm saying if you're not very finicky about, I want to be in the top 20, right? 15th to 20th rank. At 720, you may not even get a scholarship. At 740, you might get some 25%, 30% scholarship. But if you're okay with getting a 35th rank school, 40th rank school based on US News ranking, some of those schools will give you even a 100% tuition fee waiver at 740 plus, right? You just have to have conviction about why your scores in the past are not great. You should have a story to back it, and you also need to have this kind of a score to say that this score is more reflective of your GMAT. The GMAT score is more reflective of your academic capability, and that you can do justice to that program. And the score is what 740 is what I would say you should look at. 720 plus, you're likely to get scholarships. Right. I'll just Ashwita, I'm an engineer with 3 years of IT experience. All my mock scores are indicating only a score which is less than 620. Is it not at all possible for me to get an admit from a B school in the USA? See, I'll address it in 2 ways, right? One, can it go beyond 620? It certainly can go beyond 620. You just need to find out what areas you probably, I don't know, did you take help from someone in terms of analyzing what you did, which mocks you took, and get an idea about areas that you need to focus to improve upon it. If you have not done that, my recommendation is there's a free strategy session for half an hour which we run, right? Any one of you can sign up for it. I'll show the URL for it towards the end. wzko.in/gmat strategy is what it is. You can book a calendar appointment with us. One of us, Shweta, me, or Vignesh, would basically help you with that. At that point in time, if you can share your mock scores that you have taken, you'll be able to tell you, hey, these are 2-3 things, probably you fix it and then take another mock and see what it happens. That's one thing. Second thing is that a mock which is an MBA.com mock. I'm emphasizing this MBA.com mock so often because many times people say, hey, I've taken this Manhattan mock, I've taken that mock. Is the score the same as it? One doesn't know because those are all lookalikes. Those are all things which have been reverse engineered. GMAT is not going to share their algorithm with any of these test preparation companies. So they've all worked backwards and say, this is what it should have been. So take the MBA.com mock, and the score that you get there is probably likely to be a more reflective one. So if you're booking a strategy session with us to get this, it's half an hour, completely free, nothing else, right? You can take up that. I would recommend that you book that after you've taken an MBA.com test. And with that score, we'll be able to probably figure out the 2-3 areas that you can work on that could easily, that minor tweak can take it from a 620 to a 650, 660. Many a times, how you approach the test, not just your knowledge base, can give you that kind of an improvement. The 30-40 point improvement can come by that much amount of a tweak. Looking for much more than that, probably we can tell you what you need to do in terms of areas that you need to focus on to take it to beyond a 700, 720, right? So that is, if you want to say, hey, I want to hit the US business school with a 700 plus score, and those are the only ones I'm looking at. That's one part of the question. As I said, there is a second component to it. Are there schools which will give you an admit from the US, which are AASCB accredited schools, which are good schools? They are not in the top 40, 50, but they would be in the 50 to the 100 business schools. For them, a 620 score is a good score. Some of them at the 620 level might even give you a 25% tuition fee waiver kind of schools are available, right? These are schools which are working to come into the top 50. They are in the 50 to 100. Will you get a visa for those schools? Yes, you are likely to. It's not an unlikely, it's not an unheard of school which is a 400th ranked school or not ranked school at all. 50th to 100th ranked school with a 620 in the GMAT. Suddenly the competition there is a lot less than the competition. The first top 20 schools, top 10 schools, you would find that if they have one seat, 8 to 10 people apply for it. So their admit ratio is of the order of 8 to 10%. Right? The moment you cross the 10 to the 20, it would probably be the admit ratio would be easily about 20-22%, which is like 1 in 4, 1 in 5 is what we are looking at. You cross the 25th rank school, you'll suddenly see that there are schools which have a 40%, 42% kind of a number in terms of number of students who applied to the people who have been given admission, which means 1 in every 2.5 person is getting an admit. Once you cross the 50th rank school, that number is probably going to be 70-75%. So 620 is a score that will make the cut for those schools. So the question is, will I be able to get into a school in the USA with a 620? Yes, you will be able to. Are those schools good? They are good. Are they these iconic schools? Definitely not. Will they still offer value to your career? Certainly yes. How can you make sense of those schools? In those schools, there are schools which offer a STEM MBA, right? Do STEM MBA. For anyone, I would recommend, if you're not afraid of math per se, afraid of quant per se, my recommendation is go for a STEM MBA. STEM MBA in the US offers you the opportunity to do an OPT program provided you take a STEM job for 3 years, which essentially means before that H1B context kicks in itself, you get to work in the USA for 3 years. That's a phenomenal thing to happen, right? Many times, if you get some scholarship, you can pay off all your debt in those 3 years, and then you can just wait for the lottery to happen. The lottery happens and H1 kicks in, you get another 3-year window. Otherwise, you can look at relocating from the US to some other country with this experience and that MBA and find a good job. So STEM MBA extends that OPT, optional practical training, from 1 year to 3 years. So I would recommend any program that you apply, top 10, top 20, top 50, top 100, choose a STEM program, and look for a job which is a STEM denominated job. That's what is going to help you in the overall scheme of things. And more than next question, because do people with 12 year experience stand a chance in admission if they have a 720 plus score? Yes, because see, 5 to 8 years is the median age profile for most business schools, right? Between the age profile of about 26 years to about 29-30 is what is going to be the one. 12 years of experience, you are above the median. 720 plus will get you an admit. But I just wanted to tell you, the greater the experience that you have, longer the experience you have here, you kind of find a couple of things coming in the way, even in terms of the post MBA opportunities, but it is not non-existent. I just wanted to address that part. I can give you examples of people who went to Ohio with 15 years of experience as a second MBA to Ohio, got a job with Deloitte, right? He worked in Deloitte for 3 years with OPT, could not get a H1, therefore he came back to India and is working in Deloitte in India. So is it possible? Yes, it is. That guy scored a 750 in the GMAT. Another person who scored a 760 in the GMAT, he went to Purdue University. He did his summers with Reuters. It is in the peak of the COVID pandemic. And then he is working for Amazon right now in Seattle, right? So, but was the journey smooth for them as it probably would have been for someone who was 27, 28 when he or she did the GMAT? These guys did their GMAT when they're 35, 37. The journey was a lot more arduous, as in like they did not even make the cut to get an interview from many companies because they did not fit the age profile. Those companies found them to be a little older. So it is going to be a little harder to find a job, little harder to find a summer internship. All of those things are going to come into play. But can you still see light at the end of the tunnel? You certainly can. Just that you need to persevere, you need to work that much harder, you need to network that much more. 12 plus is above the median. I'm not going to tell anything which is not the truth. But have people with 12 plus found merit in doing an MBA? They have found. Need to work that much harder. Right. Mukund, Dan, Twinkle. If you have a gap year, will it pose a problem for an MBA abroad? Certainly not. Certainly not. Right. Even in India, having a gap year, even during the undergraduate, things are changing. Things are changing everywhere. If you can say why that gap year was, what you did during that gap year, if you can find things that you did interestingly, it need not necessarily be working for a company. It need not be a professional experience. You could say, hey, I took this 1 year to basically polish my kuchipudi dance. If you're a dancer, you can say that like I did this to polish my French skills because I learned French and I wanted to finish those 3-4 levels in French, right? Or you can say that I took this time to basically ponder about what I want to do in life, and that is what gave me clarity about this career path, and therefore I'm venturing upon that. If you have a nice way to position it, a gap year is definitely not a bad thing, and it is not even not a bad thing. Gap year is something which is common, which is accepted outside India. In India, we want to do it. You will see for continuity to a large extent. That's how we are culturally made. There are people taking a break to learn something different and then come back to the mainstream is completely understandable, right? Ramakrishna, I'm not worried about scoring good in GMAT. The biggest Achilles heel in my application is my 1.4 year IT experience and a 2 year gap. Already 27. This discourages me a lot. Advice for me, Ramakrishna. One of the things, see what you did during this 2 year gap and see if you can address that meaningfully. When I say address that meaningfully, couple of things it could happen. It could have been a COVID related issue that the world went through that led to this 2 year gap. We can inform that. And if you already haven't done anything to bridge that gap, take up some activity that you can say that you did starting from then up till now. It could be about learning a language. It could be about getting conversant with some of these programs. You can say, the company had issues, so I had to quit the job, and therefore I had to look at something. Initial period was stressful, so that 5-6 months I was trying to get back to a similar job. When that did not work, I used the time. I said I'll upskill myself. I went and did these 3 programming courses. Now I'm conversant in these 3 languages, these 3 packages. I also learned one more extra foreign language. Pick some things to say that start now if you have not started already. In the next 6 months, if you can do justice to it, and simultaneously you either land up a job or you've taken the GMAT and have a score by then, you can say this is something that you started a year and a half back. The first 6 months was a trying period. You thought you could get back to where you were, and when that did not happen, that's when the course correction happened, and then you reached where you are right now. That is something that you can still say. So it's not something that, yes, it's not a typically treaded path. Yours is a slightly different story. But having said that, can you make sense out of that story? Yes, the person whom I was talking about who went to Purdue and then went to Amazon, right? He was an entrepreneur for about 10 years. He had real business that was going on, but as an entrepreneur, you have so many ups and downs. So many times you also wonder, is my story a story? Everyone, when we think about an entrepreneur, we talk about entrepreneurs who either make it in these new age economy where like they sell it for $1 billion or for $300 million, and then why should they go for an MBA at all? It's entrepreneurs who probably did not see success in their ventures or saw success not up to the expectation that they expected, or the ones who are going for a second MBA. So schools understand that. How you make sense out of this experience, how you make sense out of this journey till that point, and did you do anything to address it is what they are looking at. So if you have not taken a course correction, my recommendation is do something. You can say it started a little earlier. So those timelines are slightly fungible and you can make sense out of it. Take this question from Money. Is it a great time to write my GMAT right now? Anytime is a great time to write your GMAT. I have 1.5 years of experience in a startup, and what opportunities do I have in the next couple of years? I know that the average experience required is 4+ years. Right? If you're looking at an MBA program, 4+ years is probably is the average experience. You use the right word, it's average experience. 2 is the least that many schools will look at. You have 1.5 years of experience. You're unlikely to be applying for a 2022 program. You're likely to be applying for a 2023 program. So 2023 August, you're likely to have 3 years of experience. 3 years of experience is adequate amount of experience to apply to any business school. So start your GMAT preparation right now. I would recommend that you do it right now, because if you take the GMAT right now, by August, September, you would be catching, as I was mentioning about this round of deadlines, to basically make sense, right? You should, if you have not started a GMAT, go about it hammer and tongs, because you would be having that lower end of the spectrum in terms of the experience profile, right? 3 years is just the place where it's going to open doors for someone, right? So you need to have a higher than average GMAT score. look at some form of GMAT preparation that's going to make sense for you. I would recommend look at any program where you have access to tutors, right? Because you would want to push for a 740. You don't want to settle for a 700, 720, right? Go for, if there's a physical classroom in the place that you live and you think that's going to work for you, go for it. Otherwise, if you think live online classes are going to work for you, I would recommend that you just take at least a demo class with us. We have batches starting in March. There are the details about those batches, right? We have a weekday batch, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, night 9 to 11, comfortable time for most people to prepare, starting on the 8th of March. We have a batch starting on the 19th, which is a weekend batch. If you think weekday nights, I still do calls in my office and other things, you can do the Saturday night 8 to 11 and Sunday morning 8 to 11 program. So these are start dates for our GMAT batch. But my recommendation is give everything that you have. Confirm, you're just fresh out of college. You still are in touch with education. You're not someone with 10 years of experience saying that, hey, the last time I studied, touched a book was like so long ago, and like probably looked at a book when my kid got into LKG or something. You're not in that age profile. You just finished your whatever graduation program that you did. You can gun for that kind of score, and you should not settle for anything lesser than that. Right. uh, I'll just look at this. Suddenly it scrolled up a lot. How to modify my preparation for GMAT if I'm already preparing for GRE? That's Sarmishta Datta's question. Uh, I would say about 60% of the quant that you did for GRE is going to keep you in good stead, definitely, right? Because the topics are more or less common. There's not much of a difference. The places where you need to probably work on, it's not so much in the problem solving area where you need to work on. You need to address some finer points in some topics, right? And then look at getting conversant with the idea of solving data sufficiency questions. Data sufficiency questions are the same problem quant concepts, but it's a completely different beast. A very simple question, which would not even be a question in problem solving, can translate to a 700 plus question when it comes to a data sufficiency question. So if you've done justice to your GRE quant preparation, I think the core is already with you. You just need to tweak it to get and address this data sufficiency. So as far as quant goes, what you need to do is not significant. I would say, as in, again, for want of a better number, about 30-35 hours of preparation is what you need to do if you've covered your GRE quant preparation completely. Comes to verbal, reading comprehension is common for both to a large extent. Some question types are there in GRE which are not there in GMAT, but if you have done justice to your GRE reading comprehension, you have more or less done justice to your GMAT reading comprehension. GRE, the remaining two parts, which is sentence equivalence and text completion, are vocabulary written, right? Whereas that is not there in the GMAT. Sentence correction, yes, to start with, it requires a lot of grammar because you need to know the rules to even apply them. But beyond that, there's a lot of subtleties that come into it to make sense out of it. Critical reasoning, unless you've done law earlier on, critical reasoning is something for most engineers, for most other graduate program people, is completely new. We have not done something like that. So you need to understand the basics. It's not tough, but you need to understand the basics, get conversant with it, have the ability to spot what is the conclusion in it, how do I understand these assumptions which are not stated, and work through it. So I would say give or take about 30 to 35 days to address sentence correction and critical reasoning, and about 10-15 days to do justice to the data sufficiency, provided you are good in the quant concepts in GRE and you've done justice to your reading comprehension. So we're talking about roughly 40 days. You should be able to take your mock test, and another 20 days from that point, you should be looking at taking the GMAT. So you've done justice to these two parts. End April, first week of May, should be able to do justice to your GMAT. Right. I think please advise GMAT preparation strategy for working professional struggling with verbal SECR. Couple of things is when it comes to verbal, see, the thing that where we learn concepts is in SC and CR. So obviously there is preparation to be done there. It's like learning a formula. It's like understanding a theorem. That kind of, so the equivalent of math would be that in verbal would be SC and CR. That's concept to be learned. I don't deny. But most of us, for some reason, either take it for granted or a little lackadaisical when it comes to RC. I can tell you something. If you address RC, if you get your RC in place, if you can get 9 to 10 out of those 12, 13 questions that appear in RC right, give or take, you put yourself in a place where you're in your V30, right? The scoring mechanic starts from 0 to 60 points. Typically, it can go only up to 51. If your RC is in place and you can get 9 to 10 out of those 12, 13 questions that appear in the GMAT RC right, if you're that conversant to the RC, you're already in the 30. And if you have done so much justice to RC, willy-nilly you would be, and especially do it from good sources, right? If you're at that level, your sentence correction, you may not know the rules exactly, you may not know why something is right, why something is not right, but it would sound right, and more often than not what sounds right, if you end up getting right, you can bank on that, and top it up with the theory as to why it is right. It becomes so much easier. So yes, while CR and SC are the places where you actually need to focus on learning concepts, if you find that you're making progress there only at a slightly slower pace, pick only one at a time. I would recommend you just choose between the two and see that, hey, sentence correction, grammar is something which I can actually crack it, I can understand it, I can apply it, I can go about it and get myself to a 650 level equivalent there. Wonderful, do it. Conversely, you say that, like, hey, I do the grammar and everything, but when it comes to the question, modifiers are the things which are giving me a problem. These are the things which I miss out. I do not know how this particular word usage comes into place. These are things which are like hampering my progress. Leave sentence correction by the side. Start working on critical reasoning. It's not about vocabulary, it's not about grammar rules, it's about understanding the logic and working with it. So work on your RC, give a lot of time to RC, simultaneously address CR in that case. Pick only one of SC or CR, give yourself a month and simultaneously work with RC. Once you have done justice to it, you see that you have made progress, bin that for a while and give another 20-25 days for the other component, CR or AC, depending upon whatever is the one that's left out, and still do justice to RC. If you do justice for RC for about 55 to 60 days, doing about 3 to 4 passages every day and analyzing it, what was the trap in that? Why did I miss out this? What did I not comprehend when I was reading it the first time? And focus on reading, focus a lot on reading, right? We do read, but many times we don't grasp what is happening because we don't adequately focus on the reading. We read and then we don't register because our mind wanders. Figure out what works for you. The multiple techniques that people have which would help you gain that focus. If at a point in time you find that you're wavering, right? Suddenly when I'm talking to you right now, I can think about, is my wife going to have fried rice today or it's going to be chapati at home? Then I would lose the context of what I'm answering and I would talk something rubbish. So if you realize that, take the 10 5-second micro breaks and then refocus, get back to reading, and then get conversant, get confident about what you're comprehending, right? I lost my thought midway through, which is why I said conversant, right? Get back to focusing. Focusing on reading will help you a lot with RC. 2 months for RC and simultaneously one each for CRSC should see results. And at that point in time, just don't worry about quant. You know you're good at quant. You can always get back your quant to place, right? 15 days, 10 days to ramp it up can happen. Don't worry about quant. Just focus on AC, focus on RC, focus on uh, verbal. 2 months, give yourself. Take it as a project and complete it. You should be able to do justice to it. Right. 7:47. I'll take one or two more questions and we'll wrap up the session. And I've had two announcements to make. One about the next month's session, and one about a workshop about resume. I'll announce both those things at the end of it. Right. Uh, I'm planning to catch R1, this Aman Pratik's question, right? In 2023, by when should I be done with the GMAT examination? If you want to catch R1 deadlines for 2023, R1 deadlines will be by August, September. So take a GMAT latest by mid-August. So my thing is take it by end July. If the first attempt does not go the way you expected it to, in 16 days you'll be able to take the second attempt. So by first week or 10th of August, you should have your GMAT score in place, even if it requires a second attempt. Right. One more question. Krishna Parik gave a mock yesterday, scored 550. Seems to be a bit awkward. 47 and 19. Can you share your feedback? Couple of things. Want you to have perspective to it. Starting with 550, if this is your first mock, is not a bad place to be in. It's a good place to be in. Right? Could it have been better? Let's not even get into that discussion. 550 to 700 in about 30 days is definitely doable. Right? Q47 for the first mock is a good number. Percentile wise, not great, but Q47 to Q49 is probably getting another 3 more questions right. That's all that it takes. But in terms of a percentile, it's a significant jump. Q49, as in if no one can predict, but if I can take a bet, you are already with fine tuning, tweaking, analyzing this mock and finding out areas that you should probably work on. You are at the Q49 level, you just haven't done those fine tuning to be at Q49. Q47 for the first mock, to me in the third or fourth mock will become Q49 if you do your feedback mechanism properly. So you're done there. So Q49 is a good score to have. That's a 74th percentile in the GMAT. You can with effort push it to a Q50. It's not out of your reach. So that's one thing. If very heartening, if I can say that. Right. V18 is a place where there's a lot of work to be done. Just go back and see what are the areas that you made a mistake. Pick, as in, again, the same thing that I told Ramakrishna. I think V18 means that there are lots of things that need to be improved upon. One thing which can significantly improve upon by a lot of reading, understanding how it works, and comprehending better is RC. If your RC improves significantly, you will see improvement in both SC and CR. For the simple reason, you would have read so much, your ability to comprehend the CR becomes so much better. If you can address the mechanics of how CR is solved, RC doing well will see a big enough jump in CR, right? Then work on your SC. So my thing is, do RC, CR simultaneously, you will find improvement there, and then look at SC. If you can push it initially from V18 to V30, that would give you one like relief. You'll feel that, hey, 49 in quant, 30 in verbal, that puts you in the 670, 680 bracket. That's a good number. Suddenly you're not in the 550 brackets. You're like at shooting distance from stone's throw distance, not even shooting distance, stone's throw distance from a 700. From that point, making it to a 35 in verbal and a 50 in quant should see you on the other side of 700. Definitely doable in about 35 to 40 days, very, very comfortably, right? Get your quant, just see what mistakes you did. If it's data sufficiency, get some practice on it. If it's a problem with geometry, work on it. Address what went wrong. If you're right now in 47, I think you're already at 49 with these tweaks in place. You can easily push yourself to a 50. I'm not saying 51 for the simple reason, this is my firm belief. You can work toward a 51. 51 happens, right? It's like there's a Tamil movie called Basha. For those people who are not from Tamil Nadu, they probably will not understand it. The director of that movie essentially said that every movie director wants to make a movie like that. It's like you'll have equivalents of Amitabh Bachchan's or like Amir Khan's movies there, right? Everyone will bat to get a movie of that kind, but such a movie happens by itself. It's just a lot of things that work to make it happen. So Q51, you would have done all the preparation. A person who scored a Q50 and a Q51 in terms of preparedness, in terms of his or her quant skills, probably no difference at all. The guy who got Q51, that day things worked out for him. Things fell in place. So that's why I always say Q50, Q50. I'm not going for Q51. So you're already, you can get to that Q50. Verbal is where you need to do a lot more focus. Work on it. Initially get RCCR in place. Push yourself to the V30. That gives you that confidence that I'm able to get there. Then from there, working on your AC to a 35, 36 in verbal is very achievable. Right. That note, I'll end the question part. As I said, I have two announcements to make. The first one is this resume building workshop, which Shweta is going to conduct. Many of you here know Shweta. Shweta did her MBA from USC Marshall, scored a 780 in the GMAT. She handles the verbal section here. Shweta does a lot of this activity in terms of helping people understand their profile and build a resume. Why is the resume building so important at this stage? Unlike the way we used to get seats and apply at the undergraduate stage, right? It's a JEE score, it's a BITSAT score, it's a score in JEE mains or JEE advanced, any of those scores which got us the admission, right? When it comes to business school admission, GMAT score is a very important component, but it is also other things. Schools would want to know whether you are a fit for the school. Quite a lot of schools actually encourage students even before they apply to them to give a profile evaluation. Not all schools do it. Some schools actually encourage students to send their resume to them so they can find out whether you are a fit for that school. Fit for the school essentially means that do you have ambitions, goals, do you have things that you have done in the past which are akin to students who have successfully graduated from that school and have found jobs in industries. So if they find that yours is something which is a similar to akin to what those successful candidates have been, the confidence that the admission officer has is that much higher. They'll essentially say, hey, this guy did it, that student of ours did it. So now if this similar resume comes, I think with a good GMAT score and if I get confidence that this person can handle the academic rigors, I would be inclined to give an admission. So they would do this profile evaluation. And I'm sending a resume for profile evaluation. You can start that even now for someone like 2023. Manihandan or someone asked me a question, can I apply for a 2023? You should have your resume in place so that you can send it to these schools. Start that conversation with at least 20, 25 schools. You might apply finally to 8, but you should start sending these to about 25 of them. 5 or 6 of them will respond to you. Not all of them are going to respond to them. But when you're sending a resume to them, it cannot be a resume which talked about the 4 Python projects that you did in the IT company that you're working for, the analytics company that you're working for. A business school resume is significantly different from the resume that you would give for a tech job. It could be a tech job in a core industry, it could be a tech job in an IT industry, it could be a tech job in a fintech company, right? Those job resumes are different from the resumes that you write for a business school. The resume that you would finally be applying with, like submitting for an application, would be a polished version of it. You at least need to have a rough cut of it when you're sending it for profile evaluation. So that's very important. Have that resume in place, then having a good covering letter email and start shooting it to schools, engage in a conversation with them. As I said, if you send mails to 25 of them, 5 to 6 of them will respond to you. That's a good strike rate, and you'll have that kind of strike rate, and you need to have a resume for it. Shweta is conducting a 1 hour webinar on this on, forgot the date. When are you doing it, Shweta? Right. It's going to happen next to next Friday is when she's going to conduct it. The date is missing. So this is a place where you can apply to it. admt.cc/workshop. It's 1,000 rupees plus GST to participate in it. In my mind, that's probably a very good investment to make, to have your resumes polished and know how to get going with that. Right. So that is one thing. The next month's similar session is going to be done by Shweta. Shweta is going to do it with another student from the same school, USC Marshall. He was a student of ours. Siddharth went to USC Marshall 2 years after Shweta did. He's right now doing his program there. He has agreed to come on board with Shweta in a similar session. So it's going to be both of them talking to each other about what is good about USC Marshall, what is good about the Bay Area, what is good about applying to California, what works for them, everything. They're going to be talking about from the journey of GMAT preparation to applying to the school and what they got as a value from the school. And if anyone is keen on applying to the school, what are the points that they should work on, what they should look at, right? So it's going to be an interesting conversation. So next month, first Friday, we'll announce if Siddharth is available on a Saturday. We might change it one day here or there. But the program next month is a chat between Shweta and Siddharth. Both of them are Trojans, people who graduated from USC Marshall, right? The second announcement I wanted to make, right? That's essentially the thing. Someone who had a 620 and wanted to know how to improve, this is the URL you should keep in mind, wzko.in/GMAT strategy. It's open to all of you. Book a slot. One of us will be there for that half-an-hour session. We'll tell you what you need to do, how you need to go about it. But the 620 lady, I would recommend that you take MBA.com test and then take this strategy session. It's going to be that much more meaningful to you. On that note, thank you guys. Do well in your GMAT preparation and best of luck. I'll end the session with this.